Hi everyone, it's Sam from the Danger Planet, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite GG4 strategy, Stuff the Ballots. Stuff the Ballots is brand new in GG4, and it's really cool. It is, in my opinion, the coolest strategy they've ever done. I'm a huge fan of it. I can't wait to talk about it, and I've really had some fun playing with it so far. So how does it work? Well, at the start of the game, you create 7 strategy markers. One of them in the center of each table quarter, so far pretty standard. One centered on the center point, we've seen that before. And then 2 more on the center line touching the table edges, so on the far edges of the center line. That is new. I don't think we've ever seen that before. These strategy markers are height 5 blocking and passable. And at the start of each turn, after the first, voting opens. Basically, on any turn after the first, models within 1 inch of a strategy marker can take an interact action to place a vote token on the strategy marker. And the vote token is friendly to the model's controller. So if you're obeying someone, they vote for you. Whoever has more votes on the strategy marker controls that marker. But if the strategy marker ever gets to 6, it resets and goes down to 0. At the end of each turn, you score 1 victory point if you're controlling more strategy markers than victory points you've scored, and strategy markers completely on your table half do not count. The really cool thing is that the votes do not clear. They stay forever, at least until they're cleared by having 6 or more on them. So this is a really cool strategy. At first blush, this is kind of a zone control strategy like guard the stash, or raid the vaults, I guess, in this GG. Unlike that, though, it's not enough to have models near the strategy marker. You have to be interacting with it. And this is an interact that does not ignore engagement. That's important because a lot of strategy marker interacts, like carve a path, like stealing intel tokens, ignore engagement. This one doesn't. So you need to be getting out there and you need to be spending AP to vote. And how much AP you need to spend to vote depends on your opponent. Now, there's 7 strategy markers on the board, which means, first of all, it is impossible for both players to cap this strategy because even if every strategy marker is controlled, that's 4-3. So you are going to be fighting over these markers. But more importantly, how much AP you spend depends strictly on how much AP your opponent spends. I can envisage a game where one player spends 4 AP total, 1 each on 4 different markers, and the other player spends 3 total, 1 each on 3 different markers. And one player scores 4 points, the other player scores 3 points. That's almost total max, and a total of 7 interact AP was spent to get there. That's never going to happen. You are going to spend this AP on your own markers to defend them. But there's some really interesting strategy there because you might want to defend the strategy markers on your side of the table, but you can't score off of them. So that AP that you're spending is purely defensive. It doesn't score at all. It doesn't move your own ball forward. At the same time, it's often correct to do. Now, what I've found is that getting to a marker and voting for it, not too tough. Getting to a marker and voting on it multiple times to overcome a vote advantage is often very challenging. So getting some votes down early to defend your marker can really mean a lot. It can really screw your opponent out of scoring a point. But, of course, you don't want to overinvest in that because if you invest too many points defending, you're spending a lot of AP kind of just doing nothing, especially if your opponent doesn't even go for that marker yet. Now, I want to say something now before we get too into the strategy. The voting, the optimal number of votes to put on a marker is 3. Why? If you have 3 votes on a marker, it takes 4 AP by your opponent to roll it over, or to control it, basically. 3 to get to 6, so it rolls over, and then 1 to control it. If you have 4 votes on a marker, it only takes 3 AP for your opponent to flip it. 2 to get to 6, and then 1 more to control it. So paradoxically, once you have 3 votes on a marker, you don't benefit from getting any more than 3 votes. 3 is the most votes that is really productive for you to have on a marker in most circumstances. By the same token, 2 votes isn't perfect, but 2 votes is quite a lot. It means your opponent has to spend 3 AP to get there. So putting 2 votes on those friendly markers on your side, if you can spare the AP, is going to make it very challenging for your opponent to score. Now, you'd think then that the optimum strategy is to just spend the first turn loading up these markers with votes, but they thought of that. That's why you cannot vote on the first turn. Polls don't open yet. And I think that's a really cool innovation because it means the obviously correct play is not obviously correct. You can't do it. So if you want to lard up your own markers with votes defensively, and I do think it is correct to do that, you have to wait till turn 2. And you often have better things to be spending your AP on turn 2. It's a real cost. So what does all that mean? Well, for one thing, you really want models with significant totems. Masters with significant totems have an advantage here because that totem is just an extra 2 AP that you can just spend voting. Now, some totems, they have other stuff they need to be doing, but if you're thinking about things like, I play Wong in this strategy, Olivia Bernard, she can just vote twice. Olivia's AP tend to not be very good, so you get her, she can even vote 3 times because you can make her fast. But other classic, significant totems, Sonya Creed's Purifying Flame, vote twice, Earl Burns, vote twice. Like that, these totems are really good at just stacking up those vote tokens defensively. Another thing that's really strong on this strategy is, I mentioned this in the Cloak and Dagger review, but when you are able to interact outside of your own activation, that's really strong here because Stuff the Ballots is not just about flooding the board with AP, although that certainly helps. It's about the right AP in the right place. If you put 2 votes on a marker, and your opponent really moves heaven and earth, invests multiple actions, multiple activations, maybe burns valuable cards in order to get 3 votes onto that marker, and then rests on his laurels saying like, well, now I'm done, and that marker is mine. If you can get 1 extra AP on your model, maybe via an obey, you can roll that over and undo all of your opponent's hard work. A lot of this strategy is about waiting until your opponent has activated a model that's going to vote, and seeing how many votes they did, and then strategizing and planning how to get 1 more vote than that onto that marker. So in one sense, this strategy really rewards pass tokens. But I don't think that it's actually as strong a scenario for pass tokens as it looks at first blush. Because if you're proactive, if you're getting out there and you're putting lots of vote tokens on your own markers, then even if your opponent has those pass tokens, they can't overcome your raw action economy. If you have a bunch of models like that are models that are fast or models that can interact with a bonus action like bookkeepers, and you can just lard up those strategy markers with vote tokens, it kind of doesn't matter at that point if your opponent can weasel in the last AP, because as long as it's only 1 or 2 AP, they can't overcome your advantage. This is very much a strategy that rewards quantity of significant actions. Cloak and Dagger similarly rewards quantity, but Cloak and Dagger is really just a numbers game about having to rack up those intel tokens. This one is more about spending enough AP that you're taxing your opponent out of their ability to score, but you're not spending so much AP that you're going to lose the game, because while your opponent is, focusing and delivering devastating attacks and taking models off the board, you're just dithering around voting. You need to really figure out exactly how much effort you need to spend to put those vote tokens out, and spend exactly that much and not more. So Malifaux is a game that's very much about figuring out the best way to allocate these limited AP, these limited resources, and this is a strategy that really embodies that. It's got some very, very cool play to it. And I haven't even mentioned, this is another one of those strategies that really depends heavily on the deployment type. As we've said, there are 7 strategy markers, and you can't score on the one that is entirely on your board side. So that means if this is corner deployment or flank deployment, 1 strategy marker doesn't score for you, but the other 6 are all live. But if this is standard or wedge deployment, there are 5 strategy markers that are live for you and 2 that are dead. That really changes how you can play. It really forces you to push forward more, be more aggressive. On these corner and flank deployments, at the end of turn 4, both players can score the full 3 points, so you really only are forced to fight over a single strategy marker on turn 4. But that's not necessarily the case. You can score. You can score 4 and 3 on standard and wedge, but you're fighting more over the center markers. And you're also, if you want to get those full, the full complement of markers in standard and wedge, you have to go pretty deep into your opponent's board side to do it. So what I'm getting at with all this is that what strategy, how the strategy plays out really depends on what deployment you've gotten, and also depends on the way that you've addressed the markers. Now, have you just run out there hellbent for leather, stacking votes as fast as possible? Have you played cautiously, putting up some defensive votes and then moving out and trying to just focus on 1 or maybe 2 ballots in the center of the board at a time and really dominate and control those? What you've chosen to do is really going to dictate to your opponent how they can react to you. And that's what I like best about this strategy. It's very dynamic. If you have a plan and your plan is, I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to vote exactly how I need to, no more than that. I'm going to be very strategic and surgical. And your opponent has a plan where they're like, I'm just going to spend every AP voting possible. You have to adapt to their plan. You can't just ignore them because, Malifaux is very much a game that rewards quality of AP. That's why we have these pass token crews, taking an attack action with a Fuhatsu that has focus stacked on him and a 13s in his hand is going to be a much better single AP than taking a random shot with, the Collier revolver of a machinist. But when it comes to voting, all AP are pretty much the same. Fuhatsu is a very powerful enforcer, and Mad Dog Bracket, very powerful henchman, 10 stones, but his vote counts the same as everyone else's. So if you're forced to spend Mad Dog Bracket's activation going, walk, vote, and I spent the activation of my little 5-stone, Wrestler going walk, vote, then effectively we both got the same output from it, which is 1 vote, but you had to invest a much more valuable and important resource in doing so. So Stuff the Ballots is definitely a mission that rewards building your crew in a different way. A little bit like Cloak and Dagger, you want a lot of models that are significant. You also want a crew that can really spread out. This is a mission that wants you to go not just deep into the opponent's board edge, but also way out to the flanks where the center line touches the edges of the board. So you need to be fast. And you also want to be, reasonably able to reinforce. Like if your flank model gets killed, you want to be able to send somebody else out there. So just having 1 or 2 fast models in your crew isn't going to do it. You're going to want several. As for schemes, well, this is another strategy that is really driving you to be on your opponent's board half. So if your opponent is coming to your board half, take prisoners strong. Outflank is back in the scheme pool, and outflank is actually, I think, reasonably feasible in this strategy because you are forced to go out near where the center line meets the board edge anyway, just to score on those strategy markers. So if you can just happen to drop scheme markers while you're doing it, you're in a reasonable position to score outflank. And I really like outflank. I think it's a scheme that has had its day in the sun, or deserves its day in the sun, I should say. And I think it's finally getting it. But you can also look at some other schemes that are similar and let you maybe bluff outflank. Like, for example, espionage also scores from having scheme markers on the center line. So if you place your espionage scheme marker way out near where the board edge meets the center line, it can look like you're trying to do a outflank scheme marker. Power Ritual is another good one. If you're playing on corner or flank deployment, that center line runs right into the corners of the board. And that means those strategy markers are right in the corners of the board, which means optimum place to do Power Ritual scoring. At the same time, you've got Sweating Bullets, which is all about being near the center point of the board. One of the strategy markers is in the center point. Now, does it look like your opponent's going to send a master or henchman there? Well, it really depends. It depends on what their crew hireling looks like. But if they do, then, you have this opportunity to score Sweating Bullets. I think there's a lot of schemes that are really potent with this strategy, which is another thing I like about it. It's a strategy that really encourages the type of play that rewards you for solid scheme play, knowing which schemes to pick, knowing what models to declare for your schemes, and also remembering your schemes and keeping on them over the course of the game. I really like Stuff the Ballots. I think you really want crews with lots of AP. You want crews with AP transfer so they can get that last vote and knock a ballot over the edge. You want crews that are mobile, and you really want crews that can react quickly to what your opponent is doing. So lots of out of activation movement, out of activation acting, things like that. So you also want, finally, a crew that can be proactive, that can get out there, that can put those vote tokens on the markers, and they can be, defending those markers and saying, if you want to vote, you're going to have to get through me. Democracy is great. I love Stuff the Ballots, and I look forward to playing it. So anyways, I hope this video has been informative to you and will help you with your own Stuff the Ballots games. Here at the Danger Planet, we really love Malifaux, and we love talking about it, and we hope you do too. So if you liked this video, or if you maybe disliked it, you thought I missed something, or maybe you have a particular master or model that you really like playing on Stuff the Ballots, please let us know in the comments. You can also join our Discord to talk about it there. We talk about Malifaux and a lot of other games in the Discord. The link's in the description. If you like this video, please give us a like or subscribe to the channel for some more great Malifaux content and content about some other games. And if you really like it, please, you can support us on Patreon. The link is in the description, and our Patreon's new. It's a project we're really excited about, and we have some cool rewards that I can't wait to tell you all about. But you can check them out there at the link, and you can maybe toss us $1 or $2, let us know what a good job you think we're doing. Just help us, keep going with this Danger Planet content. Anyways, thanks for stopping by the Danger Planet. Hope you had a great time.